Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. This is my March reading wrap-up. I read a little bit less than I normally do. It's a good reason. It's that I have started writing regularly again. I have a goal of writing 1,000 words every day, or most days, at least like 5 days a week. And when I'm writing more, it just means less time for reading. I'm going to sit down and work on my story. And it also impacts the sort of things that I read when I do sit down to read a book. Because I'm writing adult fantasy, I don't necessarily want to read a lot in that specific genre, mostly because then I start comparing the prose of my rough draft to like the polished prose of the book, and that's just not fair. It's just not helpful to anyone. So I find myself turning towards other types of books. Reading a little bit less, it's not that big a deal, especially when I am writing more. I started out this month by reading Naomi Novik's anthology, Buried Deep and Other Stories. This was the last holdout on my R Fantasy bingo card. I did enjoy a lot of the stories here. Some of them were fresh, brand new short stories, and others were written in worlds where she's published from before. I am particularly a fan of the Scholomance trilogy that she wrote, beginning with A Deadly Education, and there is a short story coming out of that world. So if you want some more of that world, take a look in this short story collection. The most memorable one, it's like a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, set sort of in Temeraire's world, where Lizzie Bennet is one of the dragon riders in the military. That I thought was a really fun story. And the glimpses that I got of the world building and setup for Temeraire made me more excited to finally get to that one, which starts with His Majesty's Dragon. There was some epic fantasy that I got to this month. One of them was Oathbreakers by Mercedes Lackey, Book 2 of the Vows and Honor duology, where we are following the adventures of Kethri and Tarma. I liked this one more than the first one because rather than being like a series of short stories of them trying to build up their renown, this was one more continuous tale. At this point, they've established themselves rather highly placed as like the primary mage and like the leader of the scouts in this mercenary company. The captain of this mercenary company goes missing under suspicious circumstances, and they set out to figure out what happened to this captain. Typical of Mercedes Lackey, there's some dark elements of the storytelling here. Even though Kethri and Tarma are a lot more established in their careers, they still have goals that they want to accomplish and some character growth to do, and you do see that in the story, and are introduced to some really interesting side characters from other nations around this world. And I liked how that all played out and how it was setting them up for the future. It actually makes me want to go back and read By the Sword now that I have sort of like the back story information to these two, so that I'll understand the beginning of By the Sword a little bit better. I don't know that I'll necessarily do that because I have plenty of other Mercedes Lackey to read, which is The Last Herald Mage. Changing pace a little bit, I did mention that I wasn't reading a lot of fantasy this month, and I decided to pick up A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. I picked this book up at a book signing of Susanna Kearsley's recently released The King's Messenger. And the bookstore that she went to is primarily like a mystery thriller bookstore, but they also do have some science fiction and fantasy selections on the shelves as well. I had been hearing good things about the series. It takes place primarily in London in the late 1800s. Victorian London. Veronica Speedwell is considered a spinster. Her aunt has just passed away. She's now on her own and free to go on her adventures. She is a lepidopterist. She studies butterflies. In this time period, they were called like natural historians. You know, she wants to learn more about the study of biology in general, but especially loves butterflies and goes on these various expeditions in order to collect specimens. But then somebody ransacks her aunt's home and she gets thrust into some very dangerous circumstances that she's not convinced are related to her at first. She is helped by this baron who knew her mother. He is convinced that Veronica is in serious danger and convinces her to lay low for a bit with his friend Stoker, who is a taxidermist, also a natural historian, kind of like a hunter with a little bit of a dark, mysterious past. And when this friend of her mother winds up dead, Veronica and Stoker set out to determine who really did it, because Stoker is being set up to take the fall. And the mystery unfolds from there. I laughed a lot while reading this book. I really liked the relationship dynamics between Veronica and Stoker, because things aren't going where we think that they're going to go. I like how the series is being set up as episodic murder mysteries, but still following these two as like the principal investigators here. And I enjoyed book 1 so much that I already picked up and read book 2. While I was reading book 2, I was also reading the next book that I'm going to talk about, and I found myself thinking about Veronica Speedwell mystery and wanting to return to that book. And so I am on a wait list to get the audiobook for book 3, which I think the audio is a great way to go for these. They're just fun and engaging, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. Okay, and then the last book that I read was an e-arc I had for the sequel to A Tainted Cup, which is called A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is coming out later this month. And again, I feel like the strength with this storytelling is the really weird, creepy, almost horrific world building. This is another book with really a mystery murder investigation slant to it. A Tainted Cup was comped as, you know, a Watson and Holmes-esque type of mystery, but in a speculative fiction setting, which I think is very true, and the world building really takes center stage here. The characters are unique, and they are kind of enhanced by these different biological graphs. The technology of this world is very much based on the fact that everything seems to want to mutate so quickly. So the plant life, it'll kill you, but also if you can master the science to it, you can kind of alter it and put a graft in your body that would make you immune to this mutation that would otherwise kill you. There are these giant leviathans in the sea that have seasons where they throw themselves at the coastal cities. So there's a giant wall that's built to keep them all out. And it seems like in this world, there's so much peril from just the organisms that live alongside the humans. And it's really interesting to see how they've adapted and used science to try to combat this. With all of that going on, you know, that sort of peril and turmoil and this greater empire that's trying to colonize surrounding areas, all set within the greater workings of this empire, we have these two investigators. They work for the Iodex, so that's like the investigation branch. Anna and Din. Anna is like the Sherlock character. She's really, really, really eccentric, very easily overstimulated, always wears a blindfold. And Din is an engraver, so he uses scent to trigger memory so that he can faithfully recount everything that he sees. And so he's basically on his eyes throughout these investigations, and it just follows them in this particular case. It's a totally different city, different part of the empire from where they were in the first story. It's taking place a couple of years later. They've got more investigations under their belt. They're investigating something that was stolen from a place that should have been impenetrable, and by a person that should have been basically infallible. So all of that setup I thought was really interesting, and where the world building went was really cool. I just thought that the actual investigation part of the plot went on a little bit long. I found myself being ready for the story to be over well before it was over. And actually, it almost kind of put me into a reading slump. I wanted to know the conclusion, and it wasn't quite there yet. And I think that's why my attention kept wanting to go back to the Veronica Speedwell novel that I had on audiobook at the same time. So I thought it was really successful in the world building and what we learned about the characters. I thought that the actual plot and the investigation part, it felt really drawn out to me, but maybe that was just me. Maybe I was in a weird mood when I read it. But if you enjoyed the first one, A Tainted Cup, I do think that this one is worth picking up. And with that, that is what I read in March. Overall, a successful month. I predict that April will probably be quite similar for me as I continue working on this draft. I'm only like a third of the way-ish through the rough draft, so I still have quite a bit to go, a couple more months of working on this rough draft at least, I would say. That said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite book that you read in March was. And as always, don't forget to support your local library. Thanks.